Now, around 9 million Australians will cast their votes at 7,000 polling booths in today's federal election, and polling booths from the biggest cities to the smallest communities. Healthcare and Medicare, cost of living pressures and housing have been the key issues dominating this campaign, Dan.
And after a whirlwind 5-week campaign where the Prime Minister and opposition leader and their teams have crisscrossed the nation, they're today making their final pitch to undecided voters. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese joins us now from Melbourne, where he's beginning this election day. Prime Minister, good morning. Welcome to the program.
G'day, Dan. Greetings from the MCG on game day. We're at time on in the fourth quarter here.
They're at the Holy Grail, I think some refer to it. Time will tell today whether that's the case.
It is the Holy Grail, and the Holy Grail is back-to-back wins that we're aiming for today.
Well, we will see about that. Before we get into the campaign, Prime Minister, I just want to ask you about this news out this morning about a largely automated pro-Russian news website that's been used to, quote, launder propaganda on Australian topics in the lead up to this weekend's federal election, including making some personal comments about yourself. I wonder how you react to that.
Look, the Russians are an authoritarian regime that engage in cybersecurity, that invade neighbouring countries. They deserve contempt. We stand with Ukraine, not just because of the importance of their national sovereignty, but we stand against the Putin regime. We do so unequivocally, and they engage in all sorts of activity. They harbour criminal organisations that engage in that, and it's not surprising that they would reach out and attack myself personally, given the strength that we've shown in standing up to them.
Well, Prime Minister, to the campaign now, your final pitch today. What is the promise that you're making to those undecided voters, particularly those that are disillusioned with the Australian political system right now?
That we have a plan for cost of living relief today, but investing in tomorrow. We have a plan to make sure that we continue to build more urgent care clinics. 1.3 million Australians have benefited from that. That's 13 MCGs. If they're people looking to build a career, 600,000 Australians have benefited from free TAFE. That's 6 MCGs. And for every single Australian taxpayer, all 14 million of them, that's 140 MCGs full, will get a tax cut. We've created 1 million jobs since we were in office. Unemployment is the lowest it has been for any government in 50 years, but we know that there's more to do. But if we get it right, if we are optimistic about Australia's future, including acting on climate change and the opportunity it represents, not just the challenge, then we can be incredibly successful as a nation. And that stands in contrast to our opponents who've been bumping into each other on the field, who haven't been able to take a mark during this campaign because they don't know what they're doing. They're just not ready for government. They've got a plan for higher income taxes for every taxpayer, for higher deficits over the next 2 years, and savage cuts because they need $600 billion for their nuclear fantasy sometime in the 2040s. And the cuts last time round came to the ABC that they've described as the hate media, education and health.
Prime Minister, I want to get delve deep into tax. One of the issues that's emerged on the ABC's Australia Votes is that there's a want for more visionary policy platforms, particularly around taxation. So was this election a missed opportunity to consider reforms to capital gains and negative gearing?
No, well, we've put a clear plan forward, and that's to give income tax cuts by cutting that first rate from 16 to 15 and then down to 14. Make sure that all 14 million Australian taxpayers benefit from that. The other side are actually going to election saying they will legislate for higher income taxes for everyone. Now, what targeting that first rate does is particularly help low-income earners, it helps people who are part-time workers, it helps students, it helps women going back into the workforce. And that paired with, as well, our 20% cut in student debt, which 3 million Australians will benefit from, or 30 MCGs full, will get a cut in their HECS debt. That's at stake today. 3 million Australians have, on average, a $5,500 incentive to vote Labor today and to make sure that we have a majority Labor government.
Prime Minister, if the polls are to be believed, there has been an extraordinary turnaround from just weeks before you called the election to now. How much of that is the role of Donald Trump and international politics that have overshadowed and loomed large over the Australian campaign?
I think this has overwhelmingly been about Australian issues. My government started to put our positive plans forward for the next term. Last year, I went to Adelaide in November and announced a 20% cut in student debt. I announced making free TAFE permanent. I announced the 3-day guarantee for childcare in December. I announced our plan to bulk bill 90% of Australians in Launceston in February. I announced incentives for apprenticeships at the National Press Club in Canberra in January, and we had tax cuts put in our budget in March. We did all of that before the election. Meanwhile, the opposition thought that they could just run on grievance and try to divide Australians. We've seen them try to start culture wars, including against Indigenous people, targeting them. Australians aren't obsessed by those issues. We've seen an attempt to run American-style politics here of division and pitting Australians against each other. And I think that that's not the Australian way. In Australia, we want to bring people together. It's something that my government wants to do. And just in their costings of a couple of days ago, showing they don't understand multicultural Australia, this plan that they have for cuts to pensions if people go overseas for more than 4 weeks doesn't understand that for a whole lot of Greek Australians and Italian Australians and others who will go back to the country of their birth over summer for a couple of months, they're going to cut their pensions. It's mean-spirited. It's just one of the things that they've put forward in these savage cuts, and that's before they need to find additional cuts for $600 billion. I think only one team during this election campaign have played like a team, have been consistent, have kicked in one direction. I mean, they've been kicking the ball out on the full the whole way through this game and changing their positions every few days, and sometimes they've had 3 different positions in one day.
Prime Minister, you touched on First Australians, Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people there. At the 2022 election, when you won, you committed to implementing the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full.
No, I committed, Dan, I'll correct you there. Because you and I have discussed this issue many times. The idea that came out on election night is, of course, absurd. That is your spin from the other side. I committed to that in 2019 campaign,
of course.
And the entire time I was opposition leader.
That's right. Every time I gave an acknowledgement of country, and we put that to the Australian people, and we weren't successful. Yeah. I guess the point I was making,
that was a missed opportunity.
I guess the point I was making is that when you were Prime Minister, which was what I was going to say, that was one of the first things that you said as Prime Minister of your new government. You just touched on how the Voice referendum lost. Do you still back the Uluru Statement and the other components that Australians didn't vote on, being truth and treaty?
Well, Dan, you were with me in Gama when no coalition member bothered to turn up at what's Australia's biggest First Nations cultural festival and where political discussion takes place. I outlined there what our agenda was for economic empowerment, for closing the gap in housing, in health, in education, in all of these areas. That's been my government's focus. We'll continue to engage with Indigenous people through the coalition of peaks, through individual meetings that we have. We continue to address the fact that we have a real gap in this country in too many areas. You know, it is a tragedy that a young Indigenous male is more likely to go to jail than to university. We need to do better. All governments have failed First Nations people to do as much as we should have. That's something that I'm very committed to, practical reconciliation moving forward. It's something, but we respect the outcome of the referendum. I think it's outrageous, frankly, that those opposite have tried to run a scare campaign on this during the election. You know, it beggars belief. But then again, if you can walk out on an apology, as Peter Dutton did, then you know that says a lot about your character.
Just finally, Prime Minister, just so I'm crystal clear, the Uluru Statement, Truth and Treaty are off the table.
No, what we're doing is working through practical reconciliation. You can go to. You were there at Gama, where I outlined what our agenda was. It's something we're continuing to do. A range of measures are being pursued, of course, by state governments, including in South Australia, of course. They have a voice to their parliament, and my understanding is that that's working well.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, thank you very much for joining us on Weekend Breakfast on this very busy election day.
Thanks very much, Dan.
And we have sought to put an offer to the opposition leader, Peter Dutton, to speak to you here on Weekend Breakfast, and we get to hear back. If, of course, the opposition leader wants to come on, we'd love to talk to him as well.
That's right. We'll have more on the